Welcome everybody to a new YouTube video. I think this will become a weekly series where we go through topics about money, topics about investing, financial literacy, in hopes to bring more awareness to you to help influence your decisions for the better. Right? Because there's a lot of finance is a very mysterious world to the average person. And I think it's only right as I go through my journey learning and uncovering the truth about money, how it's created, how it works. It's only fair that I share it with you guys, okay? So, the first lesson, first video on these topics is going to be touching briefly on the evolution of money. And anything mentioned through this video, if you guys want to see more in-depth talks about any of these specific subjects, let me know down in the comments and I can make that happen. Alright, so let's go through the evolution of money, and at the end it will be tied into Bitcoin and where we stand now. Alright, so let's get into it. So to begin with, we're going to take it back to a point in history where commerce and the ability to transact was extremely inefficient, right? There was many problems when trying to trade goods for something that you want or need. The whole evolution of money, like anything, is weeding out inefficiencies, making it faster, making it easier, making it smarter, and making it harder to corrupt. The first phase of commerce was done through bartering. Some places of the world it's still active, but it comes with these three massive inefficiencies. Okay, the first one would be the double coincidence, right? So I have a bird, you have apples. I want your apples, but you don't want my bird. That becomes a problem, right? Or you want my bird, but I don't want your apples, right? So the coincidence of meeting another person with goods you want while also having goods they want is unlikely. Okay. And then also, if you do meet a person with goods you want and vice versa, there's no standard value between the goods, right? So who's to say how many of your apples does my bird, or is my bird worth, right? Or is my bird worth how many of your apples, right? So the value brought up between the two people doing the transaction, right? There's no set value, which can lead to problems, as we just saw, right? And then the next thing would be storing that good after you've transacted, right? So my bird eventually will die. Your apples will eventually go rotten, right? So if we trade and I receive your apples, 2 weeks later, if I don't use your apples, they turn to mush. And then that transaction becomes worthless for me. Storing it long term becomes a problem, right? So those are kind of like the big three inefficiencies that came about when people were bartering. Next point in evolution of our money, which would be known as hard money or commodities, right? So three big examples: gold, silver, and salt. These three are what we consider a commodity. Anybody can go out and find salt, anybody can go and mine silver and mine gold, right? All of these require human energy, therefore they can pull value and command value from that work that people expel trying to achieve these, right? So at one point in history, there was a massive war over salt. And then, as always, people want other people's gold. Kingdoms used to pillage other kingdoms for their gold and silver, right? But a good part about commodities as money is now there's a relatively defined value for them, right? So a gold coin is worth X amount of goods, right? Silver coin worth X amount of stuff. Salt, X amount, right? So it solves value and it also solves storage, right? Gold doesn't go bad, silver doesn't go bad, salt doesn't go bad. These things can be stored years and years upon years, right? Until somebody comes and robs you. So it solves storage as well. It also solves the coincidence problem, right? Because now that people can agree upon a value, it's a no-brainer that you would want to receive gold, salt, or silver and in return for some of your goods, right? So some of these inefficiencies are now beginning to get smoothed out. But again, just like every iteration, it comes with its own problems. And then we come to the next iteration, which is quote unquote real money, right? Or what was deemed real money at a relatively recent point in history, okay? So the last iteration, commodities, came with its own issues. The major one being portability, okay? Imagine walking down Main Street with a gold bar stuffed in your pocket. It's not super practical, right? Same thing with silver. Or walking down Main Street with a pocket full of salt, right? It's fine for a time, but as the world progressed, this became more and more inefficient. Okay, so what do? We gave all our gold, all our commodities to the bank to hold in exchange for paper notes, which basically says the bank owes me this much gold if I give them this paper, right? What that does, in turn, I take this note that's saying the bank owes me 1 pound of gold. I then give it to you in exchange for a car, right? And now the bank owes you 1 pound of gold and I receive your car, right? And the idea behind that was at any point in time, we could go to the bank and say, I would like my gold, right? I would like to reobtain ownership of my capital. That in itself, the bank owning our gold for us or storing our gold for us, becomes the new inefficiency that we need to solve for. In 1971, I believe it was Nixon, the president at the time of the United States, suspended the peg to gold, right? So your note saying you owe me 1 pound of gold from the bank, that president went back on his promise and said, we no longer have to pay you, or not even pay you, we no longer have to give you your gold. We are keeping all of it. And that paper note is no longer tied to this gold. Okay, that's not good, right? The bank just seized private property from its citizens. All right, and so what do? we enter into a new monetary system, right? So if we think back, when we're pegged to gold, realistically, there should only be a certain amount of notes in circulation, right? Because there's only a certain amount of gold. There's a finite number. After they broke their promise to return gold to the citizens, there became nothing backing this new currency, right? Or there did. It became the government debt, or treasury bills, right? So money backed by debt. You can see how that becomes an aggressive, never-ending cycle. Okay. And as always, the new iteration comes a new inefficiency that needs to solve. Okay. So the last inefficiency were the banks holding our gold, a centralized power taking away private property from citizens. Okay, this new iteration is now inflation. What this means for every citizen holding fiat currency now, so a money that is no longer pegged to a commodity, to something real, means inflation, means high government debt, high corporate debt. It means real wages decrease over time. It means wealth gap, right? All of this is a symptom of the fact that we operate in a debt-based monetary system, right? Take away that gold, there is nothing capping the supply of fiat, right? The symptoms of a debt-based monetary system really came to manifest after 2008 financial crisis. All right, so pretty much what happened in 2008 is the government and the private sector had reached a critical level of government debt and private sector debt, right? So if you remember, there's no cap on fiat money. Debt-based monetary systems are inflationary in nature, which means they need to expand to continue to live. The trigger of this crisis was high rates, right? So instead of putting money towards productive things at 6% interest, they now have to pay more and more towards their debts, right? They have to set aside a chunk of our money, our taxes, to pay debts. But they couldn't do that. So they went bankrupt. A whole bunch of countries in the world, pretty much all of them, went bankrupt. They said, we cannot pay our debts, we must do something about it, right? So, what was the solution? This was the first time the world had seen quantitative easing before, right? So, mass money printing, mass currency devaluation, right? So, the head of the snake finally reared its head, okay? The debt-based inflationary monetary system reached a point where it needed to expand in order to stay alive. And during that expansion, to save itself, our purchasing power, our wages, all crumbled while prices of goods and price of lifestyle increased. Some absolute genius in 2009, Satoshi, launched the Bitcoin protocol. The next iteration of money, so to say. So what is it? What inefficiencies does it solve for? Decentralization. It solves for the fact that banks no longer have to own our capital. We can take back ownership. Fixed supply. Just like commodities, Bitcoin has a finite supply of 21 million ever. So, fiat money, unlimited supply, needs to expand. Bitcoin, finite supply. Third thing, it is now digital. This world is becoming more digital day by day, and it only makes sense that our currency follows that, while also solving these problems. Things get cheaper the longer you hold your Bitcoin, right? A house priced in Bitcoin back in 2009, right? Say probably worth what was it? $1 million Bitcoin. Say, because it was worth a couple cents back then. A house priced in Bitcoin today is worth 4 Bitcoin, right? Things priced in this commodity, this new money, get cheaper over time. Okay. We're now seeing it too. Nation states are using Bitcoin to erase their debt. Look at El Salvador. As it appreciates, fiat money depreciates, right? Government debt is priced in fiat money, right? So it only makes sense. We'll see real wages go up. Essentially means everything that fiat is Bitcoin is not. So every bad thing that comes about from fiat, Bitcoin solves it. What does that future look like? It looks like a massive demand squeeze for Bitcoin. Because there is a finite supply of it, countries, institutions, people with a lot of fucking money realize this. And the race to acquire as much Bitcoin has begun, right? So eventually, see, let's put this into perspective. There is 430 million millionaires in the world. There's 21 million Bitcoin. So excluding the populace, the average Joe, there is not even enough Bitcoin for every millionaire to own one. Not to mention, some of the supply is gone in wallets, stuff of that nature, right? So, do the math on that. The next thing, digital ownership. The populace, average Joes, anyone who owns Bitcoin, now has sovereign control of their assets. Nobody can take it away from you unless you give them your private keys. Don't do that. And then again, the final thing, tomorrow will be more digital than today. Our money should be the same, and Bitcoin is that. So just a quick recap, every iteration of money solves for inefficiencies, and what we're seeing today is this new iteration solving for some of the most important inefficiencies we've been battling, right? What we're seeing is a fight between the new iteration and the state that does not want this new iteration to manifest. Okay? So, we live in a debt-based monetary system. Inflation needs to happen in order for that system to survive, right? Versus Bitcoin, just deflationary. Prices shrink, priced in Bitcoin year over year. And it is self-sovereign, right? Fiat is stored in the bank, Bitcoin is stored and you're safe in a hardware wallet. Do the math on that. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. But let me know down in the comments if there's any topics that you would like to see me expand on. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.